Hey guys, so I am here for Tag Tuesday for yet another tag. This is the Reread Book Tag, which was created by Roz over at Skelly Dandling About the Books, and I was tagged by Jack over at the Rambling Raconteur, so I will leave links to both of their videos. And yeah, this is a tag all about rereading. It's actually the second tag to go under this name. There was a tag a couple years ago that went under this name, which I also did, but they're different questions, so... Anyway, the first one is, let's assume you do reread if you're doing this tag. Where do you sit on the rereading scale from almost never to all the time? I would say that in any given year, about somewhere from 15% to 30% of my reading is rereading. And that I realize is a big range, but there's very little about my reading life in general that is predictable, and even less about my rereading life. Number two, has that changed over your reading life? Well, my reading life has been very short. I've only been a devoted reader since I was 21 years old, and I'm now 26, so I only have about 5 years to work with, and as far as I can tell, my rereading has been pretty steady. I like to just reread a handful of books every year. Number three, when do you reread? Maybe immediately after finishing a book, or not till years later, or when the mood strikes. Again, there's very little that's easy to predict about this with me. I don't reread immediately after finishing a book, because I feel like the book will be too fresh in my mind, and therefore I'll get kind of bored reading it. But beyond that, there's no real predicting when I will reread a book, or when I'll be moved to reread a book. It basically is based on mood, when the mood strikes me. I do like there to be at least a year between one read of a book and another read of a book, because I feel like it's good for me to have changed a little bit before I reread a book, because I feel like that'll sort of enable me to look at the book with fresh eyes. Those are the only two real rules, is that I don't reread immediately after finishing a book, and I usually like there to be at least a year between reads. Number four, why do you reread books? Usually because some combination, ideally, of wanting to enjoy the book again, to be with the characters, be in the world, experience the writing again, and so on and so forth. And because I feel like the book will open up more if I reread it. I like to reread books that feel like they will reveal more of themselves to me on another read. Those two reasons. One, to get the enjoyment again, and two, to just get more out of the book, whether it's a nonfiction and whether I want to absorb more of the facts or the insights, or whether it's a fiction book where I just will see more of the connections in the story, thematic connections or something. Number five, how do you reread? Faster, slower, just the best bits? As far as I can tell, I reread at the same rate that I read for the first time. So yeah, I don't think my pace is faster. I certainly don't skip, usually. I do occasionally do something where I open a book and just read some bits that I underlined, just for enjoyment, or because I want to reference something. But that I wouldn't ever count that as like a proper reread. Number six, who or what do you reread more specifically? Which authors or genres or individual books? The genre that I reread more than any other is poetry. In fact, if I were to just look at the poetry I read every year, and I don't keep systematic track of the poetry that I read, because there's no Goodreads of poetry. I'm not going to count a poem that's this long on my Goodreads page, obviously. But if I were to track the poems that I read every year, probably in that case, the reread percentage would be around 90%, because I would usually rather reread a favorite poem, or at least a poem that I know I liked, rather than read a new poem, just because it's kind of like listening to music. I just get addicted to the music of it, and I just want to experience it again. With poetry is probably the genre that I reread the most. But in terms of authors, the only author who I can say I consistently am rereading frequently is Shakespeare. I reread some number of his plays every year. At the very least, for ShakeTube, I will always read, 4 plays, but often I do reread a couple outside of ShakeTube as well. Number 7, is there a book that you found better when you reread it? And I'm going to combine my answer for this question and the next question, which is number 8, one that was worse when you reread it. Because for me, It's actually the same book. It's weird. So, you probably have all heard of Frank Herbert's Dune, which is one of the greatest science fiction novels ever. And then there's the sequel to Dune, which is called Dune Messiah. And Dune Messiah is widely considered to be the weakest novel in the whole Dune saga, which is 6 books. It's widely considered to be the weakest novel. A lot of people enjoy hating on it, and I read it for the first time several years ago, and actually was pretty neutral about it. I didn't love it, and I didn't hate it. It kind of, I don't know, it was one of those weird experiences where a book is just kind of a blah to you. You don't feel strongly either way. And then a couple years ago, I read it for a second time, and I hated it. I just thought the plot was tedious, thought the writing was terrible, so on and so forth. And so that would be an instance where rereading it caused my estimation to get lower, because I was neutral, which is probably higher up than negative, and then I became negative. But then I read it for a third time, and suddenly something clicked, and I saw what a great novel it is, and how powerful it is, and so then it went up, and so it became a book that I reread and then liked more. So yeah, a bit of a weird experience with that one, but I wouldn't have reread that book if it hadn't been for the existence of Dune and the whole Dune saga, so I guess I have to be thankful for that, because I usually wouldn't reread a book that I didn't like. I usually only reread books that I feel like, are worth the time to reread. I kind of feel like if a book isn't worth rereading for one reason or another, whether it's purely for enjoyment or whether it's purely for intellectual engagement or whatever, I tend to feel like if a book isn't worth rereading, then it's probably not worth reading in the first place, which may sound a bit snobbish, but I mean, and I don't, when I say that, I don't exclude genre fiction at all, because people reread genre novels all the time because they're so enjoyable, and because a lot of them have thematic complexity. They're just not my cup of tea. So I don't think it's really a snobbish thing to say, even though maybe it can come off as snobbish. And number 9, which one book have you reread most times? Probably Macbeth. I've read it 4 times. Yeah, so it's a play that I know well. But anyway, my battery's running out, so if you would like to do this tag, please do it. And anyway, thank you for tagging me, Jack, and thank you for creating the tag, Roz. And I'll let you all go, and hope you have a nice week. Bye, guys.